Well, it's another Monday. It looks like we're going to have about 4 more weeks of learning at home. Yeah, are you liking the hat today? It's raining and I have to go out and I don't want to do my hair. So you're going to have 5 days worth of hat, Miss Kim. I still have hair. It's way back there. But so we are going to be doing 4 more weeks like this, guys. At the end of that 4 weeks, we will have a day where or two where your families will need to bring in your journals so that I can go over those for final scoring, as well as bring in your books. You have 2 books. You have Hatchet and you have Roll of Thunder, and I will need those turned back in at that time. Your test, this is Saturday afternoon for me, late Saturday afternoon. And when I was looking a little bit earlier, not many of you had taken the test yet, guys. I need you to get the test done. If you're watching the videos, you probably took the test. Going into work on Monday so that I can get all of the things that have been scored thus far into Infinite Campus. I've tried to put in scores from home. Don't know why it won't work. It allows me to do everything else but that. I ran into school on Friday and finished putting things in that would have been for the third 9 weeks. So if you haven't already done so, all the scores are in. You would have gotten a report card ages ago if we were still in school. But you can get onto Infinite Campus, pull those up, take a look at them, kind of see where you are. I'm going to be honest, some of the scores were not where they needed to be, and a lot of that had nothing to do with remote learning. It had to do with missing so much school that third 9 weeks for the flu and for sickness, lack of turning in NTI days from that point, from there, and just the incontinuity of school days. So that's why I've been so adamant about making our learning days with COVID as close to a school day as possible, because if you're not having regular lessons, then you aren't learning. I mean, I won't say you're not learning. It's very difficult to continue your learning. You kind of become stagnant. And we get out of routine and we get out of practice of what the expectations are. So some of you barely scraped an A. Quite a few of you got C's. It was a little kind of unexpected for me. But once I put the data in, it was what it was. So that being said, you have got to check when I kick back those questions, and you need to be looking for those emails. If you don't see a score on it, that means that you probably have an email saying you need to fix something. So make sure you fix it so I can score it. If you haven't fixed it within the 2 weeks that it takes to get to another test, I am going to go back in and just give you the original score. I can't keep it open indefinitely. So that's kind of where we are with things right now. So Layla's just sending me a Google Classroom notification that she has forgot her password, so she'll have to wait till we're done with our lesson. So what we're going to be doing is our end in mind for this week is I will identify cause and effect relationships in the story. Easy peasy. We have done cause and effect last year when we did Number the Stars. We have discussed cause and effect this school year in other books. May not have been an end in mind, but we talked about what cause and effect was throughout the stories that we have been reading. Our vocabulary for the week is not a very difficult vocabulary. I think we're going to be fine with it. We have prolong. I knocked my end in mind down. If we prolong something, we're going to make it longer. You can bet your bottom dollar that I am not going to prolong these lessons. I am not going to make them longer than necessary. We're going to get the material in. We're going to talk about the end in minds. We're going to do the stories, and then we're out. We've got staggered, that is walked unsteadily. If I were to be pulled over and asked to walk a straight line, and I don't drink or take drugs, but I would not be able to walk a straight line. Something about my inner ear and my balance that I got going on, I cannot walk that line. So I would have walked unsteadily if I had been asked to do that. Towered is reached high or loomed over. So I think of that as if someone's sitting and you're taller and you're like, what do you want? What's going on down there? You are looming over that person. Nauseous is where you're sick. A lot of times when new mothers are expecting or carrying that baby the first few months, they are very nauseous. Recognizable is familiar or known. Penetrate is to go into. And I tell this story, and I always get to, when I was about 10, my parents bought a double wide trailer, and they were putting it up. It was the trailer company had left for the day, and we were excited, and we had went up to where the property was, and my brothers and I were running around, and I had on flip-flops, and there was a piece of wood that was lying there and had a nail sticking straight up. And as I ran, my foot went on top of that nail, and it penetrated, I'm going to use the past tense, like if it had an ED on it, all the way through my foot. And so it went into, because I'm talking about the past tense. So that nail penetrated my foot and went all the way up. Now, the hard part wasn't when it went in. The hard part was when I had to pull my foot back out. It was not a pleasant experience. So objected is protested against. Told my kids tonight that one day next week, hopefully I can get to Lowe's with my mask and my gloves and get some paint. And they're going to start painting some baseboards and some molding in the house. Things that I can't do because I've got a bad hip. Can't sit on the floor as easily anymore. So they have objected quite loudly. They have protested against the idea that I'm going to make them do that. But they're going to do it. Retaliated is to come back at or have a counter attack. So retaliated is where somebody's, I like to think, talking smack or just talking crap at you. And then all of a sudden you're popping back off and they're popping back, and you just keep that going back and forth. You're retaliating with your words. Now, there's also the retaliating or retaliated in the forms of you did something to me, now I'm going to do something to you. And it could be as much as playing a prank. It could be something a little more vicious too. So these are our words that we're going to be looking at this week as we're reading and looking for them so that we can see them in context. Now, our vocabulary this week is the fill in the blank vocabulary, and on days 2 and 4, you will be doing those vocabulary pieces with your Google Classroom pieces. So keep that in mind as we are going through the lessons that's going to be an expectation this week as well. So we have gone over the end in mind. We've gone over our vocabulary. Let's grab our book. And we are going to start on page 69. So let me give you a minute. We're going to be on chapter 4. Let me get a drink of water, please. Gotta have a piece of ice too. I've got a thing right now with ice. Which means now I gotta crunch it. All right. Chapter 4. Cassie, what's the matter with you, girl? Big Ma asked as she thrust 3 sticks of dried pine into the stove to rekindle the dying morning fire. You sure are taking a sorrowful long time to churn that butter. Nothing, I muttered. Nothing? Big Ma turned and looked directly at me. You've been moping around here for the past week like you got the whooping cough, the flu, and the measles all put together. I sighed deeply and I continued to churn. My big ma reached out and felt my forehead and then my cheeks. Frowning, she pulled her hand away as Mama entered the kitchen. Mary, feel this child's face. She seem warm to you? Mama cut my face in her thin hands. You feel sick, Cassie? No. Well, how do you feel? All right, I said, still churning. And Mama studied me with the same disturbed look that Big Ma wore, and a tiny frown line appeared on her brow. Cassie, she said softly, fixing her dark eyes upon me, is there something you want to tell me? I was on the verge of blurting out the awful truth about the bus and the men in the night, but then I remembered the pact that Stacy had made us all swear to when I had told him, Christopher John and Little Man, about the caravan. And I said instead, no, ma'am, and began to churn again. Well, abruptly, Mama took hold of the churning stick, her eyes searching mine, and she studied me. And she seemed about to ask me something, and then the question faded, and she pulled away. Lifting the lid of the churn, it looks ready now, she said with a sigh. Dip out the butter like I showed you and wash it down. I'll take care of the milk. Well, I scooped the butter from the churning lid into a plate and went through the curtain to the small pantry off the kitchen to get the molding dish. It had been placed on a high shelf under several other dishes, and I had to stand on a stool to get it. And as I eased it out, Mama and Big Ma spoke softly in worried tones on the other side of the curtain. Now, I can identify a cause and effect relationship here. That is our end in mind, so we want to kind of keep that always in the forefront of our head as we're reading. So the cause and effect relationship here is that because the cause being that Cassie promised her brothers that she would not talk about the school bus prank. The effect of that is now she can't tell Mama and Big Ma what's really bothering her. So that's the cause and effect relationship. So the cause being she promised not to tell or talk about the bus prank. The effect is now it's kind of eating her up. And she can't tell her mom and her granny because, she had made that promise. End in mind right there. Page 71. Something's the matter with that child, Mary. She's not sick, Mama. Well, there's all sorts of sickness. But she ain't ate right for going on over a week. She ain't slept right neither, restless and murmuring in her sleep all night long. And she won't hardly even go out and play, rather be in here helping us. Now, you know that ain't like that child. There was a moment's pause when Mama whispered so I could hardly hear her. Mama, you think she could have seen? Oh, Lord, no, child, Big Ma exclaimed hastily. I checked in there right after they passed, and she was sound asleep. She couldn't have seen them old devils. The boys neither. And Mama sighed. The boys, they're not themselves either. All of them too quiet. Here it is Saturday morning, and they're quiet as church mice. I don't like it. And I can't shake the feeling it's got something to do with Cassie. But without warning, I'd lost my balance, and with an absurd topple from the knee-high stool, I crashed upon the floor with the molding dish. Cassie, you hurt? Mama asked, stooping beside me. No, I mumbled, feeling very clumsy and close to tears. I knew that if I let the tears fall, Mama's suspicions that something was wrong would be confirmed, for I never cried about such a silly thing as a fall. In fact, I seldom ever cried. So instead of crying, I jumped up quickly and began to pick up the broken pieces of the dishes. I'm sorry, Mama, I said. Well, that's all right, she said, helping me. And when we had swept the chips away with the long field straw broom, she told me, leave the butter. Now, Cassie, go on in with the boys. But, Mama, I'll do the butter. Now, go on, do like I say. Well, I stared up at Mama, wondering if she would ever know what we had done. and then joined the boys who were sitting listlessly around the fire, absently listening to TJ. See, fellas, there's a system for getting out of work. TJ was expounding as I sat down. Just don't be around when it's got to be done. Only thing is, you can't let your folks know that's what you're doing. See, you should do like me. Like this morning, when Mama wanted to bring back them scissors she borrowed from Miss Logan, I upped some volunteers so she don't have to make this long trip down here. She being so busy and all. And naturally, when I got here, you all wanted me to stay a while and talk to y'all. So what could I do? I couldn't be impolite, could I? And by the time I finally convinced y'all I gotta go, all the work will be done at home. TJ chuckled with satisfaction. Yeah, you just have to use the old brain, that's all. He was quiet a moment, expecting some comment on his discourse, but no one said a word. TJ's eyes roamed the length of the room, and then he admonished. See, if you were smart like me, Stacy, you'd use the old brain to get the questions on that big test coming up. Just think, they probably just sitting right here in this very room waiting to be discovered. Stacy cast TJ an annoyed look, but did not speak. Y'all sure are a sorry lot this morning, TJ observed. A fella just wasting his know-how talking to you all. Ain't nobody asked you to give it, said Stacy. Well, you don't have to get snippety about it, replied TJ haughtily. Again, silence prevailed. But that would not do for TJ. Say, how about we sneak down to that old Wallace store and learn how to do them new dance moves? Mama told us not to go down there, Stacy said. You some mama's boy or something, just gotta do everything your mama tells. You go on if you want, said Stacy quietly, not rising to TJ's bait. But we stay in here. Again, silence. Then TJ said, say, y'all hear the latest about them night men? Suddenly, all eyes turned from the fire and riveted them upon him. Our faces were eager question marks, and we were totally in TJ's power. What about them? Stacy asked, almost evenly. Well, TJ, of course, intended to nurse the moment for as long as he could. You see, when a fella as smart as me, he gets to know things that other folks don't. Now, this kind of information, it ain't for the ears of little kids, so I really shouldn't even tell y'all. Then don't, said Stacy with smooth finality, turning back toward the fire as if he cared not at all about the night men. Taking his cue, I nudged Christopher John, and Christopher John nudged Little Man. And the three of us forced ourselves to stare into the fire in feigned disinterest. Now, I'd like you to take out your team talk questions for me. And on the top of day 1, I want you to write evidence comes from your evidence is going to come from pages 74 through 78. That's very important. Okay, we did that the last couple of weeks. It's really helped. I've not had as many kids calling me or texting me needing some assistance with evidence or walking them through questions. All right, so I'm going to read the questions so you can break them down. And that just helps me keep in mind which questions we are on as far as me finding evidence as well. So question number 1 says, why was Mr. Tatum tarred and feathered? Number 2, are the kids still in danger of being punished by the writing men for the prank that they pulled? And then it says, explain your answer. Number 3, how does the author show that TJ is not a hardworking student? Give an example. And lastly, which of the following best describes how Cassie feels about Mr. Morrison? How does she feel about him? All right, is everybody ready? Not much to do today. 74. But without a captive audience, TJ had to reinterest us by getting to the point. Well, now about a week ago, they rode down to Mr. Sam Tatum's place, down the Jackson Road toward Strawberry. And you know what they done? Well, Stacy, little man, and I kept our eyes upon the fire, but Christopher John piped eagerly. What? I poked Christopher John, and he turned guiltily around. But TJ, triumphant with an assured audience of one, settled back in his chair, ready to prolong the suspense. Mama'd kill me if she knew I was telling this. I heard her and Miss Claire Thompson talking about it. They was real scared. Don't know why, though. Them old nightmen sure wouldn't scare me none, like I told Claude. Hey, y'all, Stacy said, standing and motioning us up. Mama said she wanted us to take some milk and butter down to Miss Jackson's before noon. We'd better get started. I nodded, and Christopher John, little man, and I got up. Tarred and feathered him, TJ announced hastily. Poured the blackest tar they could find all over him, then plastered him with chicken feathers, TJ laughed. Can you imagine that? But why? Asked little man, forgetting our ploy. This time TJ did not slow down. I don't know if you all's little ears should hear this, but it seems he called Mr. Jim Lee Barnett a liar. He's the man who runs the mercantile down in Strawberry. Mr. Tatum's supposed to done told him that he ain't ordered up all them things that Mr. Barnett done charged him for. But Mr. Barnett said he had all them things Mr. Tatum ordered written down. And when Mr. Tatum asked to see the list of his, Mr. Barnett said, You calling me a liar? Well, excuse me, you calling me a liar, boy? And Mr. Tatum says, Yes, sir, I guess I is. And that done it. Then it wasn't cause of the bus? Christopher John blurted out. Bus? Well, what's a bus got to do with it? Nothing, said Stacy quickly. Nothing at all. Well, if anybody said them nightmen was down in here cause of some stupid bus, they're crazy, said TJ authoritatively. Cause my information came direct from Miss Claire Thompson, who's seen Mr. Tatum herself. You sure? Stacy asked. Sure I'm sure. When do I ever say anything when I ain't sure? Stacy smiled with relief. Come on, let's get the milk. All of us went to the kitchen and then to the bedrooms to get our coats. And when we got outside, TJ remembered that he'd left his cat by the fire and ran back to retrieve it. As soon as we were alone, little man asked, Stacy, you really think them nightmen put tar and feather all over Mr. Tatum? I suppose so, said Stacy. The little man frowned, but it was Christopher John who spoke, whispered shrilly as if a stray mourning ghost might overhear. If they ever find out about the bus, you think they gonna put tar and feather all over us? The little man's frown deepened, and he observed grayly. Now, if they did, we'd never get clean again. Cassie, said Christopher John, his eyes wide. What? Can't sit down. Well, let me get back. Cassie, said Christopher John, his eyes wide. Well, was you real scared when you seen them? Little man shivered with excitement. I wish I could have seen them. Well, I don't, declared Christopher John. In fact, I wish I'd never heard of no nightmen or buses or streets or holes in the road. And with that outburst, he stuffed his pudgy hands into his thin jacket, pressed his lips firmly together, and refused to say another word. Well, and after a few moments, Stacy said, What's wrong? Well, what's a keeping TJ? and the rest of us shrugged and then followed Stacy back up the porch into Mama's room. And as we entered, TJ jumped. He was standing at the desk with Mama's W.E.B. Du Bois, the Negro, in his hands. "That don't look like your cap," said Stacy. "Aw, man, I ain't done nothing. Just looking at Miss Logan's history book, that's all. I'm mighty interested in that place called Egypt she's been telling us about and them black kings that was ruling back then." Still talking, he casually put down the book and picked up his cap. All four of us looked accusingly at TJ, and he halted. "Say, what is this? What's the meaning of sneaking up on me like that anyway? Y'all think I was looking for them test questions or something? Shoot, a fella'd think you didn't trust him." Then thrusting his arm around Stacy's shoulders, he chided, "Friends gotta trust each other, Stacy, 'cause ain't nothing like a true friend." And with those words of wisdom, he left the room, leaving us to wonder how he had managed to slink out of this one. Well, the Monday after his arrival, Mr. Morrison had moved into the deserted tenant shack that stood in the south pasture. It was a sorry mess, that house. Its door hung sadly from a broken hinge. Its porch floorboards were rotted, and its one-room interior was densely occupied by rats, spiders, and other field creatures. But Mr. Morrison was a quiet man, almost shy, and although Mama had offered him lodging in our house, he preferred the old shack. Mama sensed that Mr. Morrison was a private person, and she did not object to the move, but she did send the boys and me to the house to help clean it. The little man, Christopher John, and I took to Mr. Morrison immediately and had no objections to the cleaning. Anybody who was a friend of Papa's was all right in our book. Besides, when he was near, nightmen and burnings and midnight tarrings faded into a hazy distance. But Stacy remained aloof and had little to do with him. After the cleaning, I asked Mama if Christopher John, little man, and I could go visit Mr. Morrison. She said no. "But Mama, I want to know more about him," I explained. "I just want to know how come he's so big." "You know about as much as you need to know," she decided. "As long as Mr. Morrison stays here, that's his house. If he wants you down there, he'll ask you." "Don't know how come y'all won't go down there no way," Stacy said moodily when Mama was out of hearing. "'Cause we like him, that's why," I answered, tired of his distant attitude toward Mr. Morrison. Then, as discreetly as I could, I said, "What's the matter with you, boy, not liking Mr. Morrison?" Stacy shrugged. "I like him all right." "Well, you don't act that way." And Stacy looked away from me. "I don't need him here. All that work he doing, I could have done it myself." "Aw, you couldn't have done no such thing." Besides, I looked around to be certain that Big Ma and Mama were not here. Besides, Papa didn't just bring him here to do no work. You know how come he's really here." Stacy turned toward me haughtily. "I could have taken care of that too." I rolled my eyes at him, but held my peace. I didn't feel like a fight, and as long as Mr. Morrison was within hollering distance of the back porch, it made a little difference to me what Stacy thought he could do. Now, that's where I stopped for today. And your assignment for today, I'm looking at my lesson plan here, is I want you to go about doing questions 1 and 4 in your reading journals. And that's kind of the routine that we've been doing for the last 6 weeks. So questions 1 and 4 is what's going to go in there. And then we will come back and talk about which of these two will go into the Google Classroom. See ya.